advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes.
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach, but it's also Halloween, so he's also the Grinch. Shocker.
The Grinch. Yeah.
You're such a positive person, Joshua.
I am positive that I believe what I believe about the world, and the Grinch was the hero of the story.
You say that every Christmas.
I do. Christmas movies, by the way, are also very sad. I think we've had this conversation.
They are.
But there's a lot of sad Christmas movies. So, like, you know, the holidays call for, you know, a little attitude.
They do. Well, speaking of sad things, I am private equity. I'm a finance bro with dollar sign glasses, and I'm here to ruin college football as you know it. Just count my 20s. Pretend they're larger bills in front of me,
and if
plot the way that I'm going to destroy the sport that everyone loves so much.
And if you put us together, we are the private equity bro that stole college football.
I love Halloween. It's great. I actually literally I got a Patagonia vest for this. You saw me rush order it over the weekend.
It was great. We were scrambling, but I'm glad we did it.
Me too. Well, Grinch, I'm going to set you up for some topics that I know you have strong feelings about, and I know that are not necessarily positive. So let's start. Before we get to the news of the week and the Brian Kelly conversation about LSU, let's have a conversation about the state of the sport. We are little less than a week. We're recording this on Wednesday this week. We're less than a week out from the first college football playoff rankings. They're going to tell us, hey, how does Notre Dame look? Are they the top 2 loss team? We're going to see the pecking order of all of the SEC teams. We're going to learn some things about that. But will we actually know if any of these teams are actually good?
That's the question, right? And I went on a long diatribe during our editorial meeting this week for Saturday's show, so I apologize to all the people that were there. But now the world gets to hear what I was saying. We look at the top Big Ten teams, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. And it's kind of the question of do we know if any of these teams are actually as good as we believe them to be? Ohio State hasn't given us a reason to doubt them, but they haven't played a very tough schedule. Indiana's got the big win over Oregon, but you only can compare those two. And Oregon's win over Penn State on the road doesn't look nearly as good because of the slide that they've been on. Then you get to the SEC. The question there is, are all these teams kind of bunched up together and they're very good teams, maybe not great, but very good? Or is it actually just a mid-conference? Is Alabama playing down to South Carolina, an indictment on Alabama, not how good South Carolina is? Is Tennessee going into overtime with a Mississippi State an indictment on Tennessee and not a narrative about how good Mississippi State is? And you can do this with basically all the teams in that conference. And then I look at the Big 12 and the ACC, and I say the same thing. I don't know what these teams are. I thought Miami was really good, and then they dropped the game where they imploded. And Texas Tech, I still believe that they're good, but now they're toting a loss. And oh, by the way, there's a scenario that could play out where maybe the teams that we thought that could end up as conference champions there might not even play in that game. With the ACC, we thought Clemson was going to be really good. They're not good. I don't know if we know anything about these teams. And the crazy part is we're almost to November, and I don't know if I've ever felt that way.
You want to know what the answer, what the reason is for all of this?
What?
Conference realignment. These leagues are too big. So you don't have enough even interconference games with the goods against the good. And conference realignment, also everyone's adding more conference games. It's going to decrease the amount of non-conference games between teams into these leagues, which we already don't get enough of. We already don't get those to gauge, to have a true strength of schedule metric. So you do have a lot of situations like Ohio State and Indiana, where if Penn State is suddenly down, that schedule's got nothing on it. It's got a bunch of the teams in the tier that are trying to get up to the top tier, but you don't have that on a week in, week out basis or anything close to it. You don't even have Ohio State and Indiana playing this year until the Big Ten championship game if both keep winning. So it becomes really, really hard. I think the SEC, and this is the SEC argument, by the way, the coaches make this, that their league is really hard week to week. And you see it because there's rankings next to those team names. But to your point earlier, didn't some of those teams get their rankings by beating a South Carolina team that turned out not to be very good?
Yes.
Didn't LSU shoot all the way up after beating a Clemson team that turned out
wasn't
not to
very
be very good?
Right.
So it's hard. It's hard because you look at like what is propping up some of these resumes. There's not a lot, but there's not a lot for a lot of these top teams.
I mean, by the way, when it comes to that, like we watched Alabama lose in week 1 and we automatically assume that FSU was good and not Alabama had some issues. And I'm not saying that I think Alabama's a bad football team. I think they're playing much better than they did in week 1. But did we not penalize Alabama enough maybe for losing that game because FSU was no good? And so that's where you start to ask all these questions. Right.
I mean, that hasn't happened to your point. Like that is going to be the worst loss that a playoff contender has.
No doubt.
And it doesn't feel like we'll be treated. This is actually one of the things I want the selection committee to answer because I want them to tell us how they view that loss. Mm-hmm. Are they essentially throwing it out and saying this team is a lot better since then, whatever? Or is it going to weigh them down? They're going to put them behind other one-loss teams because it's a bad loss.
Yeah, I'm curious, right? And like, again, I think if you're going to go it was an aberration, this is a much better team, the way they support that is by saying, well, they beat Georgia, who's a highly ranked team, and they beat whoever who's a highly ranked team out of the SEC, Missouri, and they'll just go down the list. And once again, I don't know how good Missouri actually is. I really don't, right? Like, and these are like and I'm picking on teams, but their best win is over a 500 team, right? Like that's what it is. And so these are the questions that I'm asking because we're to November and I'm still trying to figure out like, who are the actual teams? Is anybody good? Is anybody bad?
And further down, like in the rankings, Texas is still ranked. I wrote about this on NBCSports.com. They should not be ranked, not after needing overtime to beat two of the worst teams in the SEC. They're there because they have 2 losses, and every other team with 2 or fewer losses in the SEC is ranked. And we had to wait until there was a third LSU loss for them to fall out. Right. You can realize these things sooner. You can realize these resumes aren't based on much except preconceived notions and then credit for beating a team. Maybe they're not actually very good. Maybe they're not over 500. Like that stuff needs to matter. And I actually compared them to Iowa. Very similar comparison. The win isn't as good. Their best win is over Minnesota, blowout fashion. But the losses are good. And they played Indiana better than anybody. And all the metrics are really similar defensively, like where Texas and Iowa are. Iowa's a little better defensively, but they're very comparable. And then on all the metrics offensively, Texas is a little bit better or a little worse than Iowa. Like they're very comparable teams with similar profiles and resumes. And Iowa's 4 spots out of the AP poll.
Yeah,
like it doesn't make sense.
It's crazy because I would make the argument that Iowa played Indiana better than Texas played Ohio State, right? So like the thing that we do with the SEC, which is an insane thing to do, is like, oh, well, like they got a good loss. And it's like, okay, now that we're grading losses, like what are we doing? But if we're going to go that route, then I think Iowa should get more credit for the way that they played against Indiana than Texas should get for losing to the current number 1 team.
Good point. It's a good point. All right, I'm going to take off my money sign glasses, but I'm still going to be a finance bro for the rest of the episode. I hope that's okay with everyone.
Pull the mask down real quick.
You can still be a Grinch at heart, though.
I am a Grinch at heart.
You are a Grinch at heart.
Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which one it is.
Okay, let's get into the news of the week. This is LSU moving on from Brian Kelly. Really, truly seismic news in this sport. It immediately becomes the best available job. And the speed at which this thing deteriorated was stunning. I mean, I think we all went to bed on Saturday night thinking, well, it's going to get pretty bad next week if your next game when LSU loses to Alabama, huh? Yeah. No, like it got really bad in one day. And by Sunday night, Brian Kelly's out of a job. He's 34-14. They won double-digit games a lot of the years he's there, but no CFP appearances. And it was the third loss against A&M in a blowout in a way where it was so bad so quickly in the second half that all the LSU fans left.
Yep.
It was all Texas A&M fans at the end doing their cheers and chants. And Brian Kelly got booed twice going off the field because he wasn't out there for the alma mater, came back out and got booed again. It got so ugly so quickly that it felt like you had to do it. And I know I said that about Penn State too, and these are wild things to say about the two of the three biggest buyouts ever paid in college football. We're talking like $53 million. They're still negotiating it, but like that's what he's owed. That's crazy to say that they had to do it. They had to spend that money, but you think about everything else that is tied to this. And in the state of Louisiana, you have so much politics that get pulled into this. You had the governor tweeting that they should not and cannot raise ticket prices because of the product that they were putting out on the field. It was so untenable for the situation for Brian Kelly that it gives me a great opportunity to pull up one of my favorite videos about college football. This was when Brian Kelly first got the job. And he spoke to fans at a basketball game. I think you guys know where this is going.
Well, this is a great way to get started. And I haven't even won all my games yet. It's a great night to be a Tiger. I'm here with my family, and we are so excited to be in the great state of Louisiana, but more importantly, to be with you great fans, and to be part of what is going to be an incredible ride here.
Okay, so it wasn't even just the family. Family.
It was great to be a Tiger, and
Tiger.
more importantly, like
it
he's
was great.
parched, needs a glass of sweet tea.
That's what he's going for, which is that honestly led to a bunch of some of the best memes from this week are people, just putting like a surfer bro talking about whatever. And it's like, here, it's Brian Kelly interviewing at UCLA. Like it's been its own little niche group of memes, which I appreciate.
The memes have gone crazy this year, by the way.
They have. But Joshua, I do want to start. Like, we talk a lot about fit.
Mm-hmm.
Fit doesn't matter if you win a lot of football games, then you're the right fit, whoever you are. But it did feel like from the start, there was always going to be some skepticism that this was going to work, right? Or were you convinced that Brian Kelly would do the things that he said he was going to do, which is, the things that three coaches before him had done, which is win a national championship?
I wasn't convinced of that because I hadn't seen that in his past. And it's interesting. And I know Notre Dame, over the last 30 years or so, maybe isn't what it had been, but like to run from a place like that because you feel like you're not in a position to win a title felt like a cop-out in the beginning. And then I was in wait-and-see mode because he's not a bad ball coach. He might be really difficult to get along with, and we can go through all the bad things that we believe about him. But, like, as a ball coach, like, there's a reason why you're in the running for Notre Dame's and LSU's of the world. The fit thing to me is an intriguing thing because Nick Saban is not a guy who would have traditionally been the fit. He's a guy who's from West Virginia. He had coached in Ohio and in Michigan, and he had been in the NFL. And he goes to LSU. And the reason why the guy is a fit is because he's a winner, right? Like, I think that's the biggest thing that leads to fit is winning. And Brian Kelly, over his tenure, didn't seem like he was pushing the program forward. As a matter of fact, they went backwards in a lot of ways, where they were an SEC championship game. And then all of a sudden you're looking around. It's like, man, we got this quarterback, Heisman Trophy, go down the line. And now you're looking at it and it's like, you could have had another Heisman Trophy and you were talking about winning a title, and we'll pull the receipts. And here we are with 3 losses and we're negotiating what the buyout's going to look like because you're not employed anymore. And the fact of the matter is he didn't win enough of the important games and ultimately the most important one, which is a championship.
Great points. Agree on all of them. And he did spend this entire past offseason and summer saying that he had a defense that was worthy of winning a national championship, that they had failed Jaden Daniels. Yes, we would have been able to do it, should have done it with Jaden Daniels. Yeah, you should have. Like, it's actually one of the more embarrassing things that you had that offense with Jaden Daniels and couldn't even make the playoff that year. Like, that was a problem, and that was embarrassing. there's some issues with the defense, but again, like there was like blank check on hiring on the defensive side. You brought back Garrett Nussmeier, who's had a really dreadful season this year. But you all this money was spent in the portal after Bryce Underwood decided to go to Michigan. And a lot of that didn't work. The offensive line has been terrible. They can't run the ball. There's all these problems that are happening this year, which are inexcusable when you're the head coach. But, again, we talk about what makes jobs attractive in this day and age. You can look at like Brian Kelly's skill set and see what makes it difficult for him in this day and age, because it's not just recruiting and getting the best players that your school's able to get. It's relationships.
Sure.
All of the stories that are coming out about his time at LSU are like, oh, okay, so when he got there and there was a staff that was there that was on the interim basis, he didn't speak to them. He didn't know anyone's name in the building. Like, he didn't bother getting to know people who worked for the football team and the athletic department.
That's embarrassing. Like, that's your legacy leaving there. It's really bad. And to your point, like, the relationship thing is big. You mentioned recruiting. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I got to get this one. The thing that they talked about when he was at Notre Dame is that he would make excuses about their ability to recruit because of the academic overlays. But if you talk to people who are familiar with Brian Kelly, they would tell you that he was not a relentless recruiter. He was not a Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, a Dan Lanning that we see in the current day and age, like a guy who is knocking down every door. That's not what his MO was. Walking into the SEC, you want to be a passive recruiter? Best of luck, bruh.
Right. It's just, and you think that you're in this talent-rich area, talent-rich state.
No competition from another big school.
You are the power conference school. Right. Everyone dreams of playing at LSU. And that's why, like, some coaches that are not great coaches have won national titles at LSU. Yeah. That's part of the thing. I will say, so this went straight up to number 1 in my list of best available jobs because of that. Like the recruiting rich area, the state, the advantages that you have, you're in the SEC, all of that. There is one negative to this job that is a pretty big one. And it is the political environment around the LSU athletics department, but about the football program. So I'm glad we recorded this later in the day on Wednesday, because it gives us the opportunity to play this clip from the Louisiana governor, Jeff Landry. And this was a serious press conference that he gave on Wednesday.
The first question is absolutely correct. We are not going down a failed path. And I wanted to tell you something. This is a pattern. The guy that's here now that wrote that contract cost Texas A&M $70-something million. Right now, we got a $53 million liability. We are not doing that again. And you know what? I believe that we're going to find a great coach. I mean, maybe we'll let President Trump pick it. He loves winners. I'm not going to be picking the next coach. But I can promise you, we're going to pick a coach, and we're going to make sure that that coach is successful. And we're going to make sure that he's compensated properly. And we're going to put metrics on it, because I'm tired of rewarding failure in this country.
So he is saying that LSU's athletic director, Scott Woodward, is not going to make this hire. It's going to be the LSU Board of Supervisors, which guess who appointed a lot of them? Guess who handpicked the Board of Supervisors? The governor.
Of course.
And now he's saying he'd rather Donald Trump make this hire than the athletic director at LSU. So that is what people are talking about when they say that this is a very unique political situation that a coach has to walk into. So I think that's a pretty significant con in the con list when you got pros and your cons. Do you want to deal with this?
So interestingly enough, I'll just get this off of my chest real quick, but it feels anymore like a lot of these press conferences are SNL skits. And every time I'm trying to figure out if it's AI or satire or if these things actually occurred. And that's a weird place to be online. Oh, I know it did. So here's the interesting thing about the political environment, though, is if you become the guy at LSU and you're winning games the way that people want you to, you've got more pull than the governor. The governor ain't getting behind a microphone and saying a damn thing about you if you're winning games the way that people expect. And I think that is part of the weird dynamic here is like, I don't think I would ever want to walk into an environment where I felt like I had to win over politicians who would get up at press conferences and just start, airing out all the things going on with the program. But at the same time, when you're the man, you're the man. And I think a lot of these coaches look at themselves and say, well, I'm going to be the one who wins, and that's not going to be a problem for me.
It's possible. It's possible. Also, people did have to correct the record a little bit. So Scott Woodward is the person that hired Jimbo Fisher to Texas A&M. He is not the one that gave him the extension, which ended up being the problem in the $77 million buyout. But he was involved because he goes to LSU, and then Texas A&M is worried that he's going to take Jimbo Fisher with him. And that's why they gave him the extension. But yeah, listen, I think if you make bad football hires, you should not get to continue making them. Like there should be some accountability there. There also LSU is trying to hire a full-time president. Like there's some leadership questions here about this, not just like who specifically is going to make the hire, but who will be your boss moving forward.
I will say that part in terms of the alignment of the athletic director, university president, head coach, that might be an obstacle for some people who are looking at this job. I've heard coaches time and time again talk about the relationship with all of the administration. Curt Cignetti recently, when he got the extension, talked about not only the athletic department leadership, but university leadership. Conversations I've had with Urban Meyer just talking about his path in coaching, he felt very strongly that everybody had to be on the same page there. So like the governor is one thing, but just zooming in on the state of that university as a whole, that is going to be a big question for anybody looking at that job.
So you're saying Lane Kiffin, who's supposed to be coaching at 4 different schools next year because every fan base is convinced they're getting him, Ole Miss is convinced they're keeping him. So you're saying like someone who has that kind of leverage may not want to walk into that environment?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is
do you have a Lane prediction as we sit here at the end of October where he'll be next year?
Probably a crazy little prediction. I think he's running it back. I think he should, but I think that's what he's gonna do. Wow. Lane feels more introspective these days. The Florida thing, I think, is the one that has all of our attention because of his admiration for Spurrier and in the history there. But it feels to me like his kids like Oxford. He likes Oxford a ton. They've done some good winning. They're trying their ass off to get him as much money as he needs to do what he has to do. And frankly, expectation-wise, you walk into Florida expected to win a championship. You walk to LSU absolutely expected to win a championship. And at Ole Miss, I think they're very happy with the direction of the program right now, where they feel like on an odd year, they might have an opportunity to do it.
Again, you have to decide if you think you can win a national championship where you are contend for one, then you don't have to leave. Like the pecking order of these jobs is not what it used to be, not what it was 8 years ago, 10 years ago. So it is about like the level of resources, commitment from the school, and then you can get players and then you can do what you need to do. I also will say, this goes to your theory about him staying. The schedule is not going to help people who are trying to hire him, because if Ole Miss makes the playoff like they should with their remaining schedule, they will have a game into December 20th, 21st are the first round games. If they win that game, they would be playing around New Year's. The portal opens January 2nd. Right. Can you, if you are LSU or Florida, can you wait that long to make a hire? I mean, that's what's going to throw a really interesting wrinkle into this entire carousel.
I'm totally there with you. I feel like the timing aspect is not talked about nearly enough for some of the issues. You'll be immediately behind the 8 ball. Like you can make an argument that if you pick a coach that makes it past the first round of the playoff, you might have to chalk up year one as a lost year because of what the portal can do to the roster. Here's a question before we get off of this coaching portal, but the more I've thought about it, the more I go back to this take that I had earlier in the year. Do you think anybody's called Dabo?
Interesting that you say this. We talked about this on the radio today. Or do you think Dabo's called anyone?
I think it's happened. And it's because of the idea that I believe he needs to be in a different place where maybe he can be fresh.
And maybe he realized that.
Maybe he does, right? Like they don't deify me in X, Y, or Z location, and they're going to push me out of my comfort zone, and I need to refresh my message, and maybe I need to do it somewhere else. And I'm curious if anybody's looking at him, knowing he ain't going to be coaching late in the year, and saying, okay, we could get Dabo. He's got championships. We can, if you believe in him as a coach, we can work on the new messaging, and he's going to be our guy moving forward. I'm curious.
I am too, and I think that is what would really send shockwaves to this carousel.
I agree.
Because there in 2021, staying on Brian Kelly for a second, Brian Kelly to LSU and Lincoln Riley to USC, like those sent shockwaves. Like those were just stunning, huge moves. And all of our conversations about how crazy this carousel is going to be have not really included the possibility of something like that happening.
The secondary,
the
big
implosion,
goes
yeah, like
to one of these open jobs. It's crazy to think about.
Right. And so, but Dabo would be ripe for it. And I worked with Dan Wolken at USA Today for a long time. And he always he developed a theory and he sticks by it, a 10-year rule that after 10 years, it might just not work anymore. Like you just know too much about each other. All the warts are there.
Yep.
Like you said, the appreciation isn't quite there anymore. Like
Nope.
It's just, what have you done for me lately? And also, okay, well now we're board winning, going 11-1. Like, why haven't we won a natty in a while?
I'm with you. I think it's a great rule. I think about it just from a professional perspective. A lot of people who spend 20 years in a job and they're like, well, how come I'm not making as much money as the guy working at X, Y, or Z company? It's like, well, you should have job hopped a little bit more. Right. And so it's this idea of being in new environments and like putting yourself on a different track, getting around different people with different thought processes. The biggest issue to me with Dabo and Clemson is the echo chamber that exists there, where it's all guys that he's brought up, and it's either former players or guys that he brought in as GAs that he's just elevated, and you don't have a lot of outside thought there. It's a thing that I think about.
No, I think I like that as a hypothetical, because I want everyone's brains to just be open to the possibility of something crazy like that. Because there are only 3 active coaches that have national championships. Kirby Smart's not going anywhere.
Nope.
Ryan Day, we've been joking on Sirius all week. Like, if he loses to Michigan, call him that day and be like, hey,
I think so.
Hey, you went through this. Do you want to do it again? Like, you want to just come here? You want to come somewhere else? But otherwise, like, that's it. Those are the ones. Although Jimbo Fisher is trying to get back into coaching. He's got a natty.
I mean, thinking about the guys on the sideline becomes a little bit intriguing too. Like, I know folks are tossing around Saban, they're tossing around Urban's name, which, like, I think both of those guys have told you what they feel about the new era. But like the Jimbo thing becomes interesting. I know Gruden's name's being tossed around. Don't necessarily love that. And then to the point about guys who just got fired, they'd be able to step in tomorrow if you hired them. So
yeah, if you want to hire James Franklin, if you're Virginia Tech and you want to hire James Franklin, you can do it right now.
Right now.
So all of that's going to be interesting. We'll keep tracking on the carousel. It feels like it's just going to be a dominant topic of conversation the rest of the season. So much fun though. Like trying to pick the fit and like, where do you want to see guys and who would do well where and who could get poached. Like, it's fun. It is. And again, I don't think many people thought that the Indiana head coach would say, keep me out of this. I don't want to be in this. That was
one of the, feels like a big domino right away where he was like, nope, not in it.
Not in it. Indiana's going to pay me $1 zillion. It's fine.
$1 zillion.
Another big storyline that we actually have not talked a ton about on our pod is the Heisman race. Yep. So calendar is flipping to November and it's crunch time. I mean, like, this is it. We're going to see if we can get some Heisman moments from people. So I decided to make a ranking, a top 5 heading into November. We're putting it up on our screen right now, but for those listening, I've got Ty Simpson from Alabama at number 1, then Fernando Mendoza, then Jeremiah Love, Julian Sayin, and Haynes King. So no Diego Pavia in my top 5. I think Haynes King is a more productive version of that type of quarterback, but I understand why people are giving love to Diego Pavia. You know, the story. It really matters though. And in moments too, right? So even though, not the most aesthetically pleasing game against Mizzou, like, people remember some moments from it.
Yeah, it's 130 yards and he had 20 on the ground. Like, let's call the performance what it was. And like, that was the one where people felt like he should be vaulted higher in the Heisman conversation. Yeah, like, let's get a grip here.
It's the story. It's the story of Vanderbilt going from, the bottom to playoff path. So that's part of it for him. But I really think, as we sit here, calendar turns to November, Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza have been the 2 best quarterbacks in the country. I will say Ty Simpson is going to have more opportunities down the stretch for eyeballs. Like, we have all seen the numbers and the viewership for these SEC games, even when they're not playing a ranked team. Like, it's geared towards watching these teams and getting eyeballs on them. And then, of course, you have the Iron Bowl. Indiana is playing the rest of their schedule against teams that have combined for 1 Big Ten win. They already are a buzzsaw and they already have blown out a lot of teams this year, but that might not be appointment viewing these games for Indiana down the stretch. So he may not really have an opportunity for a moment until presumably the Big Ten championship game. Now, right. I have Julian Sayin on this list, and there's not a ton there for Ohio State either, with Penn State dropping off, but you will have the Ohio State-Michigan game. We're all going to watch that.
That's going to be the most watched game of the year, as it is every year, so that could be his moment.
Yes. Now, Jeremiah Love is not getting enough love in this conversation. I'm seeing lists that are all quarterbacks everywhere.
Yeah.
But he is special. And he's putting up really, really impressive numbers, and we also know that he's splitting carries and with another running back who's one of the best running backs in the country. So I think that should factor in. And when you talk to coaches, they understand how special Jeremiah Love is. So I want him in there. I hope he stays in the race. And then what can you say about Haynes King? I mean, he would be one of the best rushers in the country without throwing the ball.
Yep.
And yet he does that and is a productive passer. With him, the key is always, can he stay healthy down the stretch? But he's been remarkable. He is the Georgia Tech program. His coach is stumping for him to at least be in New York. So I feel good about these guys. I like that it's a pretty wide open race, and it feels like you can have real arguments and conversations about this, which I think last year it was pretty set that it was going to be Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty. I feel like by early October, mid-October, maybe.
Yes. I mean, we had the conversation. It felt like every week last year. And part of the reason why was because they were two names, Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty, that would traditionally not be on this list, right? And so it was very exciting to follow and to watch them on a week-to-week basis. Now we've kind of gotten more back to the quarterbacks, and Ty Simpson has just been slicing and dicing, and Fernando Mendoza has been just the same. And so it's kind of just felt like, okay, these are the two guys right now. And the conversation after that has not been very in-depth. I love that you put Jeremiah Love on here. Love. The USC game is all anybody should flip on if they have a question of whether he deserves to be the third pick on your list. It was ridiculous. And to your point, was splitting carries, and Jadarian Price had a great day, and Jeremiah Love's day was still phenomenal. Julian Sayin, quiet right now. Quiet because there just haven't been the opportunities against the marquee names. Watch his boy play.
Well,
go ahead.
He is having a quiet season, and so is Ohio State. It is so wild that people are not talking more about the number one team in the country. I do think it's the margin of victory and the perceived, competition. But I really think that there are people that have not paid a lot of attention to Julian Sayin since the Texas game. They're because they didn't open up the offense for him there.
Well,
go watch him play Wisconsin.
Anytime they open up the offense, watch him play Minnesota, watch him play Wisconsin. He was throwing the ball down the field. Best deep ball passer by the numbers in college football, by the way. Throws of 20 or more yards. There's not a quarterback that's more accurate. He's very productive doing that. So I mean, it's a great list. I love Haynes King at the bottom, by the way, because I agree with you on him versus Diego, and he's starting to spin it much better at this point in the year too. Interesting list. I think it is, to me, a more interesting Heisman conversation than we probably give it credit for nationally, because I think there's so much variance that can happen. Ty Simpson goes out there and has an awful game, and then what are we saying here? So I'm glad you threw this in here because it's a good topic.
Yeah. And I mean, even the way we've talked about this, you go from preseason Arch Manning to Tommy Castellanos a little bit for a couple weeks. John Mateer, there were different front runners. It was changing week to week. It's kind of
Dante Moore was on the top of the list.
It was starting to coalesce, I think, now more around Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza, but we'll see. There's still lots of twists and turns of the final 5 weeks of the regular season. Speaking of some of those, it's time to paint a picture and imagine that presented by Xfinity. We try to predict some of the chaos that will come this weekend. Joshua, why don't you go first?
I feel like you and I both were in this frame of mind of how much do we actually know about what we're seeing right now? And mine goes right into that. I'm saying Ohio State, Indiana, and Georgia, the three of the top 5 teams that are playing this weekend, all struggle through ugly wins. And it's going to be the last weekend before we get to the rankings release. And, I think people are trying to poke holes in Ohio State and Indiana because they perceive that the schedule hasn't been good, and Georgia's already toting it now. And I'm curious if they kind of slog through some of these games over the next week or so, what do people have to say about these teams? Is this a chance where an A&M, who I believe is off this weekend, gets to jump all the way up to the top because they've got some big wins? They just had the win at LSU, the one at Notre Dame people continue to talk about, and it was a huge win for them. But I think these teams being maybe ugly but still winning would cast doubt about what we perceive them to be.
I'll also just say, I think the committee could put Texas A&M 1.
I think they could. They'd be justified.
They would. So that is going to be one of the big questions for the first rankings as well. What I'm imagining is just total chaos. So not just like ugly wins. I'm saying
Coastal
ACC
chaos.
Yeah, coastal chaos, ACC chaos. Coastal chaos lives on.
Yeah.
But now it's just league wide. So I'm going to say at least one of these things will happen. NC State will beat Georgia Tech. Cal will beat Virginia, or SMU will beat Miami, or multiple of those upsets happen.
Okay.
Listen,
okay.
I think for as amazing as the stories have been for Georgia Tech and for Virginia, these are teams that have had some shaky wins there. Like there has been some luck on their side, especially Virginia. My goodness, 3 overtime wins this season. Feels like it would be shocking and genuinely, like, I cannot envision a scenario where, with all of the carnage we are seeing across the sport and within the ACC, that like the two teams that get to the championship game are undefeated in ACC play. Like, it doesn't seem possible.
I agree.
Like, Virginia actually has lost to NC State. It just was a non-conference game. So that's even crazier. So that doesn't count as an ACC
like
loss.
that's one of those where it's gonna, like, you'll look back if they're able to make it in and they'll be like, oh, no conference losses, and you'll be like
confusing.
explaining it to your kids one day about like, yeah, this was the year when.
It's crazy. So my point is, I don't think that's going to happen, because right now it would be super clean if that's how it happens. It's just Virginia versus Georgia Tech in the ACC champ game. I don't think we're going to do that. I think this week is prime upset territory in the ACC. So I'm calling it at least one of those.
It's a spooky weekend.
It is a spooky weekend. That was Imagine That, presented by Xfinity. Time for the walkthrough to preview some games specifically. Want to start in SEC country. We will finish up in the Big Ten with our game on NBC, USC Nebraska, in just a second. But let's start with Vanderbilt versus Texas. I think that if we had thought about this game before the season started, we'd have been like, okay, maybe interesting because Vanderbilt pulled off some upsets last year, but the Arch Manning show, etc. Totally flipped. Right. Vanderbilt is the team that is, the team staring down the college football playoff. Somehow Texas is favored by 2.5 points in this game. Little surprised by that. Arch Manning has been in concussion protocol this week, although he did practice on Wednesday, according to Steve Sarkisian. He's coming off his best performance of the season, that frantic comeback to get the game to overtime against Mississippi State, which is when
that
he
was
had his
insane,
concussion.
by the way. Like, watching that back is crazy.
And Arch's total stat line: 346 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He made some really big throws. Now, again, they escaped Mississippi State after escaping Kentucky. Like, they don't deserve to be ranked. I will drop that, but that's just an aside. So he may or may not be back. We don't know yet as we're recording this on Wednesday. But this just feels to me like a game that is actually more about Vanderbilt, kind of, can they weather these highs that they are hitting and not come back down to earth, not have a letdown, because Texas does have a ton of talent on that team. And they did figure some stuff out in that comeback against Mississippi State. So to me, I think it's a really big test for Vanderbilt.
I feel like I have this Vanderbilt take that the people are not going to like, but like, who have they really beaten? People were like, oh, they blew out Virginia Tech, fired the coach. Oh, they beat number 11 South Carolina. It was number 11 at the time. That ain't the number 11 team. They lost to Bama. They beat LSU, fired the coach. And then you get Missouri, and Missouri's quarterback got hurt in a very critical moment in that game. I know a lot of people are going to be like, the wrong team is favored here. And I feel like that's a justified thing. But it goes back to the conversation we had at the top. I don't know if Vanderbilt's actually a number 9 team. I don't know if there's that much separation between them and Texas, who we know doesn't look the way that they should look right now. So this is the way it's going to go down. I think Pavia has to have one of his big games here. In a lot of the games where he's faced more talented rosters, the games that people are giving them, like kind of building this reputation on, he hasn't had his best performances. So I think if he does, this is easy for me. I think he's that important to the team. If not, I think this is where it gets to Texas's defense maybe shows up and plays the way that we've anticipated that they could. And whether it's Archer, the backup, who went in and played very well, maybe they're hitting their stride a little bit more on offense right now. And all of a sudden we start to learn that Vanderbilt maybe has a couple more pimples than we believe they do right now.
And I'm sure that they will. I mean, part of looking at them as a potential playoff contender is thinking that could be another loss here on the schedule and needing to weather that. So that one's going to be a really interesting game. Elsewhere in the SEC, the other one that's got my attention, Oklahoma versus Tennessee. The Vols are favored by 3 points in this one. Feels like it's an elimination game, maybe for both, but definitely for Oklahoma. I think you're starting to have some angst from that fan base that was really hoping to see a little bit more growth this year. We talked about Oklahoma's schedule in the preseason. We've talked about it through the year, that the wins and losses may not look drastically different than last year.
Yep.
But I think it's fair to say that there's also some questions about, like, where is this team getting better? Is it getting worse than it was earlier in the year? And I've seen Oklahoma fans complaining that, like, the team does get worse offensively the more they get into SEC play. It happened last year, and so far it's happening here. I will share this. So Venables was asked about kind of getting John Mateer back on track this week. And he was talking about that he just needs to try to help him manage the burden of expectations and the burden of responsibility. Everything goes through the quarterback. And, you're playing a lot of good people. You can't have a quarterback that plays poorly and expect to win, but you don't have to play perfect to win either. You need to manage the game well. I think we both have said that we wonder about that sometimes with Mateer and his decision making. So that is a lot on him. I'd be interested to see if he can bounce back here. But it's going to be a game where, obviously got strength on strength with Tennessee's offense and Oklahoma's defense. But then, can Mateer manufacture points? Like, can they get drives? Can they get points? Because I still feel confident that Joey Aguilar and company will be able to.
No doubt. And I'll touch on what Venables said. I actually like that he said this. From the standpoint of, it was talking to his quarterback, right, about expectations. And so what is that for external? What is that for internal? What does that mean for your game? But he says the part about it that stands out to me, everything goes to the quarterback. That's their biggest problem. And I think that's why John Mateer sometimes feels like he has to play outside of himself. If he ain't running it, they're not running the ball well. Right. And then obviously he's got to dish it around in the pass game. I think that they're just a very flawed offense from the way that they're constructed. And the fact that he has to do so much for them puts him in situations where maybe he tries to do a little bit too much. Since I'm on my haterism, I'm going to be the Grinch again. Who has Tennessee beaten? Like, do we know that Tennessee's actually a good football team? Wins against Syracuse, East Texas A&M. I don't even know who that is. They lost to Georgia in overtime. It was a game they probably should have won, but they lost. They beat UAB, Mississippi State. They beat Arkansas in a close game, overtime Mississippi State, and then they beat Kentucky. Lost to Alabama. Who, like, how do I know they're the 14th best team in the country right now?
We don't.
And so this is one of those games where, like, either you are or you ain't, right? Like, we're going to learn about Tennessee, and if they can beat a team like Oklahoma, who, again, they've got some pimples too, maybe you start to feel much better. But it goes back to this. I don't know anything about any of these teams right now.
And you still just don't have a marquee win on your resume. So, like, you could have great losses, but what's propping it up, right? That's going to be one of the questions, I think, when you look at these teams that are going to have more losses on the bubble for the CFP this year. Last game for our game previews, and then we'll make our underdog picks, USC and Nebraska. This is really fascinating to me for a number of reasons. Trojans favored by 6.5 points on the road. This is definitely a playoff eliminator for both of these teams. And you have a couple of really interesting trends coming to a head. So you have Matt Rule, who has a really bad career record against ranked opponents. And then you have Lincoln Riley, who has a really bad record on the road against Power 5 teams. Something's got to give. Sure. And it's a prime opportunity for both of these teams to reset some narratives, to change the direction of their program, and for them to take that full step forward. Nebraska, I put in my midseason college football playoff bracket because of the path, because of the schedule. And then what do? They get blown out by Minnesota. USC has a tougher path because they still have Oregon on their schedule.
Yep.
But if they went out, they're definitely going to be in, I think, and they would have a win over Oregon, right? Which would be a big one. But it's all about where these programs are and where they can go. I talked to Matt Rule this week, and he was telling me that it feels great to be heading into November with a potential path to the college football playoff. Like, they talk about it. They have talked about all of it. Like, it's been a motivator. And he said, like, last year and the year before, they were heading into November trying to get their 6th win to be bowl eligible and break that long streak. They got their 6th win last week and didn't even mention it in the post game in the locker room, because that's not what the goal was. Like, they didn't need to celebrate. They did celebrate it last year because it was a big deal. It was an important step in the process, but that's not where they are now. And they've had ups, they've had downs. The Minnesota game was just like so inexplicable and like crazy to just have such a disaster in kind of all areas in that game. But I think that they've learned how to win close games. They've done 3 one-score games that they've won. And they have figured out some ways to work around their warts enough to put themselves in position to win games against like teams, which I feel like this is. And then USC, I mean, we've talked about them over the last few weeks. Like, love that offense, love what it looks like. Jaden Mayava has been awesome. Mekhi Lemon, maybe the most valuable individual receiver in the country. So it's going to be really interesting. And Joshua, I know you and I've talked about this all week. Like, for as much as we're going to talk about the quarterbacks and everyone's going to want to watch this game for the quarterbacks, like, it's really about which team is going to run the ball better and which team can stop the other team from running the ball.
No doubt. Before we get into that part of the breakdown, you were talking about, the Lincoln Riley on the road against Power 4. And then Matt Rule against ranked opponents. I think this is also one of those narrative games in the sense that Nebraska, if you're going to be a playoff team, you got to be a team like USC in terms of talent profile. And USC, if we want to take you seriously, you got to go into the Midwest, and things might be a little cold and a little bit windy. You got them big boys up front, and you got to be able to come in and play your game with a team like that. So very excited in terms of what this means in the big picture in terms of how we view the program. Now, you mentioned that most people looking at this, they're like Jaden Mayava and that offense for USC, and Dylan Raiola, the young superstar, looks like Patrick Mahomes. It's the run game for me. Yeah. Lincoln Riley's offenses are always best when they run the football well, right? And so I think that they're going to want to establish a run. And oh, by the way, Nebraska's run defense has not been very good this year. And so there will be some opportunities there on the ground. You flip it over to Nebraska, and I'm watching the game tape, and I hadn't watched a ton of them throughout the year. Emmett Johnson, their really running back, oh my gosh. I mean, the way he runs his feet, he's got good patience. He doesn't need a lot of space to break into a hole. He's physical enough. He catches the ball in the backfield, and he can hit you a home run, right? Like, he is the type of running back that you want to have as a part of your offense. And when I look at their pass game, I say that Emmett Johnson's a guy who helps their O-line in the run game. Dylan Raiola is a quarterback who hurts their offense, their offensive line in the throw game, because of the way he likes to extend plays. He wants to evade the pocket over the top instead of stepping up. And guys can fall into sacks when he does that. He just holds the ball too long sometimes. You try to make sense of the game against Minnesota. Part of the problem was that Dylan Raiola was just trying to do too much back there with the football. By the way, the receivers don't get open very well down the field. That's a different conversation. It's going to be an intriguing game because I think it literally is about whoever can run the football. It feels like an old football cliche, but the team that runs the ball the way that they want to is the team that's going to be successful.
Yep, I agree. And also, I think I haven't checked the forecast today, but I do think you're right that it's going to be cold and windy. Very Big Ten football for the USC Trojans, which is part of the deal, part of the vibe. That one's going to be really fun. Cannot wait. We'll have the pregame on NBC at 7:00 Eastern ahead of that. And we'll have the halftime as well, where we're going to make a playoff prediction. We're going to make a projected bracket, what we think the committee is going to do next week. So
nobody's been smart doing predictions, by the way.
I know. I was going to say, look forward to definitely nailing that one, just like every other prediction we've made this year. Time for underdog picks, Joshua. Last week was rough for both of us.
Yeah, it was.
very painful. I was devastated so I had Cal last week against Virginia Tech. If that game had ended in the first overtime or in the third overtime, I would have been fine. It was 4.5 points. It ends in the second overtime, so they lose by 8. So that was a tough one. But my Superdog pick did cover. Wait, no, did it?
Yes, your
did.
Superdog covered.
Yes,
Yeah.
Michigan State.
Yeah.
Yes, they covered.
Which, by the way, backdoor
Michigan.
cover. They scored with like 15 seconds left. Scored a touchdown.
I knew it was coming. I had faith in them
I'm
the
sick.
entire time. Both of yours were tough, and I'm very surprised that you are once again going with a team that is playing Indiana. But let's start with our regular underdog picks. Go ahead. You go first.
All right. So my regular underdog pick, which could qualify, I guess, as a super dog, but I'm taking Wake Forest as a 10-point dog. They're at Florida State. This is a vibes pick in a lot of ways, and it's mostly because I don't trust FSU, and they haven't won a conference game in forever. But I also look at Wake as a team where if the officials didn't absolutely job them with an offsides that was very clear against Georgia Tech, they end up winning that game. And Wake is a one-loss team headed into November, and we're feeling a little bit different about them. And they're one of those teams which it feels like you have to be this nowadays in college football as most teams. They're very comfortable winning the close game. They've won multiple, I think 3 of their wins this year have come in close games. So for me, it's a lot of distrust in Florida State, but also I think Wake is a touch better than I think most of the public would give them credit for being.
Okay, I think that's a good one. I thought you were just going to straight up say it. Our producer, Ryan Burke, Wake Rad. We always watch Wake Forest and are rooting for them.
We cheer for him.
On behalf of him.
Yes.
That was the loudest cheers I've heard all season was that 50-yard field goal last week.
That you couldn't even tell if it went in.
Just went right over.
Drop down.
Yeah, that was crazy. Okay, so I like that pick. I'm going with Cal again. This is their chance to redeem themselves to me. I get 4.5 points again. But this one's at home and they're playing Virginia. And listen, I know that all of these overtime games go Virginia's way.
Yeah.
Again, the overtime did not go Cal's way, but come on, there's travel involved here. And this is a Virginia team that I don't think people think is actually the 15th best team in the country. Yeah. But they somehow are finding ways to win. They're not going to have that luck forever. Or if they are, they should go buy a lottery ticket. So at some point, something's going to happen that's going to go against them and go in a close game or a big moment. And I think it could definitely happen with the Calgorithm.
I'm here for it. The travel is the part that probably gets me the most. And I wouldn't have
if this was the line at Virginia, I wouldn't go. I wouldn't take it.
Somebody's probably done the calculations on it, but I think going from east to west has really been a bit of trouble for people. And then of course, if they're the teams traveling west to east in the noontime slot, it's a whole thing, but I'm with it. All right. Let me
wait. And you've also got maybe the best freshman quarterback in the country for Cal. So
he's balling.
Please come through for me this time.
Name properly, so I won't attempt to, but he is balling. All right, so we'll do these super dogs, and before we get into it, I just want to say Nicole kind of glossed over how bad my weekend was. So I picked Minnesota to cover 8.5 against Iowa.
Yes.
And
what was the final?
They lost by 38 points. And I think if it was just the second half that I would have covered. All the damage was done by halftime. Like this, it was so bad. And then I had UCLA to cover 25.5, and they threw a pick 6 immediately. And I was like, all right, I'm cooked. So me being the dumbass that I am, I'm going right back to the well, and I'm taking Maryland as a 21.5 point home dog to Indiana. Here's the thing.
I'm worried about you. I'm worried about you picking it. You know that Chris Signetti has been complimenting Maryland all week. We know what that means.
Maryland is 4-0 against the spread as a dog, and I am relying on the numbers. I have picked them, and they have been good to me. And if this one doesn't work, I'm going to have to come up with a new strategy.
Yeah, I think that when Signetti is finding stats to complement these other teams, and we know he's a sicko, but like he's being like, it's like specific stuff. It's like, well, on third down in their own territory, they're really good at that. You know, like he's like digging deep.
I'm just hoping that the crowd gets to Mendoza over there at the Shell, that ruckus crowd.
really tough to trust Maryland in October and November too. So we will see. This is
All I
going to be
need
a great
is for
test.
them to cover. I don't need them to win. Just
I
cover
know.
21.5.
I'm just saying, like, this is a really good test between the buzzsaw of Indiana versus Maryland as a cover machine. We will find out what happens. Okay, I already set this up because I told you that I think there's going to be some chaos in the ACC this week. So I'm going to take SMU to cover 12.5 points at home against Miami. I don't know that Miami's very good anymore.
Wow.
Like,
just like that.
yeah, like, I mean, obviously we know that Carson Beck is capable of a 4 interception day.
Sure. Yeah.
But that
he's capable of being the number 1 in Heisman odds this year too.
True. But that game that they lost to Louisville, like, exposed a lot of things with their line play on both sides. So I just have a lot of questions. Took them a while last week to get going. That game was uncomfortable against a not great Stanford team. Yeah. So I feel like this is definitely within reach for SMU. So I'm in ACC land. You are in ACC land with me, and then picking against Signetti again. So we will see how that goes.
I think I should
my
say
thoughts
this
and prayers.
Because Signetti at some point, because, I think he likes the both of us, is probably going to come across this clip. And his DC was a GA when I was at Ohio State. And he's going to use me picking against his team as motivation. He's going to run the clips in their hype video. And I want to put out a disclaimer that this ain't Signetti slander over here. This is not about Sig. I was the biggest UCLA supporter. I've got the jersey upstairs, my Nico jersey. Okay. And Maryland has been a cover machine as underdog. So that's the only reason why, Sig.
Okay. It's still not going to work. I mean, they can just blow out people. I don't think there's ever too big a number for Indiana to cover right now with the way they play. They're always prepared. They are always ready. They never have a letdown.
They're edgy.
Yeah. So we'll see. One of these trends is going to come to a head here. And unfortunately, I think it's Maryland being the cover machine.
You're probably right.
Just want to get that on the record. Okay, well, we will have our Saturday night pod as always. We will definitely, be able to look a little bit more forward towards the first CFP rankings. We'll do our projected bracket as well for the pod. So, subscribe, rate, review, do all of that so that you'll get it. You can have it with your morning coffee on Sunday. But yeah, that'll do it for this week for the midweek episode for Rushing the Field. Thank you for listening to Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua / the Grinch. I'm Nicole / the private equity ghoul trying to ruin college football. I guess trying to think of like a Halloween term. This has been a blast. We appreciate you. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you this weekend.